Thank you, girls. Very special this morning. Thank you. Our scripture this morning is from 1 Corinthians 12, 27 and 28. If you're able to stand and we will listen to God's scripture. Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it. And in the church God has appointed first of all apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then workers of miracles, also those having gifts of healing, those able to help others, those with gifts of administration, and those speaking in different kinds of tongues. And the Word is God.
Thanks. All right, you have a seat. Now, so it's so good to work with Jerry up here. I think back to as Jerry was, when I was growing up and younger, and Jerry was my Sunday school teacher in high school class up there in the balcony when that used to be a Sunday school room. And I think of times when Jerry was up here speaking, and I was the one, a kid out there listening and looking up to Jerry. And you know, when I'd get together with Todd, and we'd go out and do things. And Jerry was out there, you know, with his guidance, and I always appreciated hearing him speak when he was up here. And he sometimes says now at this point that he gets coughing and things and doesn't speak much anymore, but it's always great to work with Jerry. This morning I want to tell you a little bit of a story, and as I'm telling you that story, I'm going to get some equipment out, so don't mind me, I'll just keep talking. But I want to tell you a story about this guy who lived in a island country off the coast of Florida. And in this country, small island country, there was a group going to be coming to the place where he lived, because there was a lot of buildings in disrepair, church needed fixing up, and there was a mission group that was going to be coming to this place. And this man, we'll call him Rodrigo. Now, Rodrigo, he volunteered. He and some other guys, they heard this mission group was coming, and they volunteered to be of assistance. And they said, hey, whatever you need, we're your guys. And you know, Rodrigo, he's feeling kind of strong, and he's thinking, you know, if they need some sand carried, bricks, maybe carrying some water, you know, maybe they need some wisdom. Maybe they need a little advice. Rodrigo's your man. And you know, Rodrigo, they got together and he got his job for that day. Found out his job was to hold the ladder. And old Rodrigo, he wasn't too sure what he thought about that. You know, he said, you know, I could be doing all sorts of things, helping this mission group out. I'm their guy. But I guess I'll just stand here and hold the ladder for the day. How you doing up there? Yeah? Just gonna hold the ladder, do the best I can. What a job. Just gonna hold that ladder. Well, you know, as I was reading about that story and thinking about help, I was thinking about being a helper. And, you know, I was thinking about being a helper, assisting someone. It's not really the center of attention. You know, that guy out there on the ladder, he's doing the work. Well, Rodrigo, he's down there, he's just holding that ladder and making sure things stay in place. And if I think about help, I got to thinking about that it's not really the focus of attention, and yet it's so important. I've got a windmill tower at my place, and we put that up a couple years ago. Donnie and Dad and I, and a couple guys helping out. We put that thing up, and it's about 40 foot tall. And I've got my internet receiver up on the top of that windmill tower. And sometimes after a storm or something, I've got to climb up there. And as I'm climbing that little ladder, I'm kind of looking at that frame as I'm going up and looking at those bolts that are holding that thing together. And I'm thinking, boy, I'm glad those bolts are working. I'm glad each one of those bolts hadn't decided that this isn't a very good job and they're just going to leave for the day. And I'm glad that thing's holding together. So I think of a bolt as being a helper. Or, you think of a chain. Each link hooked together. Each one's not very important. If you have one link, you're not going to hook up to whatever you're driving. You get them all together, and it works. Or, like yesterday, I was over at Dad's place, and we were hooking up the grinder up to the tractor, getting ready to grind some feed. And we hooked that tractor up to the grinder, dropped that hitch pin in there, and hooked up the PTO shaft, and went out to go grind. Well, if that old hitch pin hadn't been in there, it's not a very glorious job, but it's pretty important. Pretty important that thing stays there, or else that grinder wouldn't have been following that tractor out there. Pretty important job to be a helper in that case. I got to thinking about years ago when all of us guys, Pastor Jeff, you always telling stories, so I figured I better throw in some stories here. And maybe... But, years ago, got thinking about, as we're getting into the winter season here, getting colder. Well, not today. It's 65 overnight, I noticed on the thermometer. But, there's going to be a day. It'll be back to being cold again, like it was a few weeks ago. And got to thinking fond memories years ago when it would ice up. And old Kevin, he's already grinning over there because all of us guys used to get together around here as we were growing up, get icy. We'd call each other, hey, the creek and the ponds are iced over. Threw a rock out on the ice, it held. I think we're ready to go play some hockey. So we'd get together, and Het brothers, and Tim and Robbie had, and Lefties, and Freestings, and Just brothers, Olsons, anybody around here that wanted to come play hockey. We'd all get together, and we'd go on usually down to Catlin Creek, or maybe out on a pond, maybe Jim Het's pond, and at that time, when we started off, we'd pile up some tires around the edge, light them up, and that was our light we'd use. And flame from the tires, and we'd play hockey with that. Or later on, we graduated, we actually ran some wires across the creek and hung lanterns on those wires. Man, we were moving up. Well, as we got older, Aulne and Dave, they got the construction, they got the generator, we had lights and everything. But, as a kid, as we'd get together, we'd play hockey. And we'd always, get out there, tighten up, skate around a little bit, and then it was time to get it going. Join together as a group. A couple guys would be captains. And then somebody would choose a number between 1 and 10. They'd have that number, probably whisper it to somebody. And then the two captains would have to say whatever the number, they guessed, and whoever was closest got the first choice of starting to draw teams. And so we'd go back and forth, captains, picking the different ones. And man, I was ready to play, right out there, ready to be chosen. And pick, I'm waiting. Pick. Well, I'm one of the small guys out here. I'm one of the youngest. I'm going to get picked sooner or later. Well, sooner or later, you get picked finally on a team. And, those guys are always pretty good. Hey, all right, come on, let's play. But when we started to play, and we'd put up usually a couple tires as our goals out there on the ice, or maybe a couple of boots, if we didn't have enough tires, because we were using tires for our light. If we'd set up our goals each end, and usually, you pick the most important person to be goalie, usually the young little guys. And so I remember, being goalie. Man, I'm back there, one of the youngest and littlest at the time, as the other guys were all a little bit older, and you're watching, and the game's going on. Man, you're back there just waiting, and for one thing, you're starting to freeze, your feet are hurting and everything, but you're watching, just hoping that that puck's going to be getting close to you. Puck's getting closer. Pretty soon you're hoping that puck's not getting close to you. But that's the way it was. The youngest one, it seems like, were goalies. They were kind of the helpers for the team, and sooner or later you get a chance to get out there. Grew up a little bit bigger. Later on, I finally got to be graduating out of the goalie helper spot, but had a lot of fun. And as we've gotten older, and the beard started to grow, it started to get white. Now the fun to get together is oh, by the way, hey, there you go. Tor, you've been clicking. I got my remote up here. You're on top of it. As we get a little bit older, now playing is getting together with the guys and doing some roping. And let me see if this is going to work, Tor. There we go. And, a few years back, started getting into attempting to do some roping. And Old Donnie's back there already grinning. But Dan, he started ahead of me, and Donnie got him going, and then I kind of got involved in that too. And you know, when you're going to be roping, it's not just a matter of getting on the horse and looking all glorious like that picture. It's getting that rope, and first of all, you got to figure out how to swing it without getting it around your neck. And then once you start getting your swing down, you practice on throwing that thing out on that dummy, or the dog that's passing by, or hopefully a cat. And once you got it down where we learn to throw that rope, then you got to get on the horse, make sure your horse can handle you swinging that rope off of it. That doesn't always happen. And then you got to learn to back that horse up into the box, into the arena. And Kelly, she's looking, because this is at her place, so it's out of Pinners, where we get together out in the arena. And she's about seen it all by now. But you get that horse backed up in there, and hopefully it'll stay backed up in there. I was looking to see if Bailey was here, because I had one time when my horse went up, and horse went up and went over, clear over on its side. Old Bailey told me, he said, I'd have been out in the hills by now. But you know, you practice the rope, you practice your horse, and then you got to get it all put together. And there you are. Get the horse there, the calf is there, the cattle are behind, horse is nervous, you're nervous, and that calf takes off. And at that time, you got to get it all put together. And like Dan said, it's like things happen at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And you know, when you're doing that, even when you think you got it together, then you don't really have it together. And you know, Donnie, he's the king of patience. He's there to laugh with you and laugh at you. But he really is. He is patient. You know, he doesn't raise his voice. It's all helpful, and he does a great job of helping out. And Clint, same way. You know, you got these two guys that are experienced ropers. And Dan, he's more experienced than me, but we're kind of tag-alongs here a little bit. And Clint, same way. You know, he's there having a good time. Never talks you down for doing something wrong. Gives you some guidance and some help. But I always appreciate those guys, and all three of them, as they give help in learning to do this. And we have a lot of fun. And you know, the ultimate then is when you actually put that practice into use. You go out in the pasture, and Donnie calls Dan and me, and we load up, and out we go. And it's kind of like the master and the other two stooges. And we get that cow out there, and then Dan and I were attempting to get the legs caught, and then yeah, that's when the laughter begins again. But it happens. It works. And you know, as I was thinking about helpers and about people working together like that, I was thinking back in the Bible, thinking about Moses. Now, Moses was a great man of God. And in Exodus 12, it talks about Moses. And Moses, he was the one that led the Israelites out of Egypt. He's the one that God spoke to directly. God gave him what he should do. And yet Moses had a sidekick. He had somebody that was with him. Anybody remember who that is? Aaron. Aaron, his brother. And I would kind of consider Aaron as being a peer helper, as you see there, a peer helper. He was there in Exodus 7:1, it talks about him. And it says that he spoke for Moses. He carried the staff for Moses that miracles happened, the rod that budded. In Exodus 12:1, as it goes on to talk about God speaking to Moses, it said he spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them instructions. In Exodus 12:31, when Pharaoh summoned them in, he summoned Moses, but in came Aaron also. He was there to help out in any way he could. And it's kind of like, you know, if you think back to the old Tonight Show, Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon. I know there's a few of you that are kind of giving me some recognition. Old Johnny Carson, you know, he's up there telling jokes and things, and Ed McMahon, kind of like the Aaron and Moses of the deal. Ed McMahon, he's always off the side chuckling and adding his little words of advice in there. But the peer helper, a friend, a brother, someone who's close, who can help out. I kind of think of it as helping that person to keep their edge. If you look in Proverbs 27:17, a friend is like someone as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And another person is there to help that other person stay sharp, stay on track. Moses had another helper. And this other helper was not a friend necessarily, or someone close to his age, or a family member, but in a way he was. This was someone who is what I would call a mentoring helper, older and wiser than Moses. It was actually his father-in-law. Does anyone know the name of Moses' father-in-law? Putting you to the test here. It's getting harder as we go. Jethro. Way to go. Man, that's pretty good. Who got that? Yeah, good job. Jethro. You see a picture there. Now, we don't really have a picture of Moses, but that's a picture pretending that's Moses and Jethro. I would call that a mentoring helper. Someone that's older, wiser, more experienced. In Exodus 18, it talks about that. And if you want to look in your Bible with me, you're welcome to. Exodus 18, it talks about Jethro as his father-in-law. And if you look closely in Exodus 18, verses 1 through 6, it says that Jethro kept Moses' family, his wife and his kids, during the time that Moses was going in and speaking to the Pharaoh and all that let my people go at that time. Way to go. Good job finding that. All that time, Jethro had Moses' wife and kids keeping the family, do a little babysitting. And he was keeping things going for him. Well, as Moses led the people out of Egypt, and moving out and heading toward that promised land, in Exodus 18, 7 through 12, it talks that Jethro brought Moses' wife and kids to join Moses, and there was a happy reunion. They were glorifying God. All was going well. You know, they're moving out toward the promised land. Moses has his family back. Hadn't seen them for how long. And, Jethro, he's observing what's going on. He's a wise older man, and he sees Moses getting frazzled. He's on edge. Because here he is, this great leader of all these thousands of Israelites, the one that God speaks to directly. And he's having to make decisions of when they move, of what to do for all these people. And yet you have also all these people gathered together. You can imagine thousands of people gathered together in a big camping trip, how that would be. And you're having little issues and problems. And they're coming to Moses. Help us make our decision on what we should do here. Help us solve this problem. All day long, these people are coming, and Moses is getting frazzled. And he can't take it anymore. Jethro checks it out. He goes, Moses, I got a little advice for you. He said, why don't you appoint some people? Appoint some helpers. Get a helper over a group of people, and they're helpers over other helpers who are leaders of these people. And when people have a question or a problem to solve, they go to those people. And they can help solve those problems. And then if there's really something that needs to come to you, then they can come to you for advice. Moses listened to that advice, and he realized, hey, that sounds like a good idea. And it talks about, in Exodus 18, 24 through 27, it talks about Moses putting that advice into action, and that it helped. The mentoring, in this case, helped provide that missing piece that Moses needed. It's kind of like that missing puzzle piece in his puzzle life. Another example is a quiet community helper. This is not an assistant or a helper or someone who's very obvious. This is someone who is kind of in the background. Someone that's helping people that you don't necessarily see or hear a lot about. And yet, they are there doing their job. The one I'm talking about in this case, put my papers together. In this case, is a person whose name is Tabitha. Acts 9, 36 through 43. Now Tabitha, I've always liked that name, Tabitha. Not that I necessarily would have changed Erica's name from Erica to Tabitha, but I always kind of liked that name. And Tabitha, that's the, and I'm going to look on this one for sure, Tabitha is the Aramaic name of this woman, but she had a Greek name. Does anyone know Tabitha's Greek name? And this is from Acts 9, 36 through 43. Dorcas. And what was it? Dorcas. Dorcas. Hey, how about that name? Yeah, I hear that name used in elementary once in a while. Usually they shorten it down to the nickname part of it. You dork. I've even heard Dorcas. Dorcas. But, you think of that name, Dorcas. What a name. And yet, when I looked up that name, the meaning of it, it actually means gazelle, or emblem of beauty. So, any of you that are thinking about maybe having another kid, maybe a girl, you might consider that emblem of beauty. Yeah, gazelle. Dorcas, little baby Dorcas. But anyhow, Dorcas, or Tabitha, it was thought that she was a widow. And yet she was one who was kind of in the background, always helping other widows, other people in her community. The picture you see, it shows her sewing. And it says that she sewed clothes and helped those. If there was those in need, they could come to her and she would help them out. Help them with clothes, help them with food, with things they needed. And one day, Dorcas got sick and she died. And this is a true story out of the Bible. And it was said that Peter, one of Jesus' apostles, was traveling in that area. And some of the people came to Peter and said, "Hey, Peter, somebody in our community, very important person, Dorcas died." And Peter came and to see what's going on. And in Acts 9, verse 39, it says the widows were there crying. They were showing the clothes that she had made. They were going on and on about Dorcas, about how she had helped them and helped other people and how necessary she was in that community. And it said that Peter, when he heard all those things and he saw Dorcas laying there and she had died, it said that he fell to his knees and he prayed. And this was one of the times that Peter himself, that there was a miracle that happened through Peter. And it said that as Peter prayed, that Dorcas opened her eyes and turned toward him, and that Peter then took her by the hand and helped her up. There was a miracle, life returning, of that community health being returned back to those people who needed it. This community helper who was humble, it even says in verse 36 that she was named a disciple because she quietly helped others in any way that she could. And as I was thinking through these different things, I was thinking about this being a Christmas season and helpers in the Christmas season. And I got to thinking about, to me, the ultimate helper in the Christmas season is that man that was married to Mary. That man that was asked to do so many things and yet such a background guy. I consider this as a relational helper. Joseph, the one who is betrothed to Mary. And think about it. Here's Joseph. He's betrothed, he's engaged to Mary, and he finds out Mary is pregnant. And that she is going to have a baby, and it's not his baby. Now think about it. Now Joseph was a man. You can just imagine if that was the story in your life, how heartbroken and how betrayed you would feel. And yet he was one that loved Mary so much that instead of what he could have done, openly rebuking her and sending her before the leaders and saying, "Look what happened here," he decided he's just going to quietly divorce her, going to take care of it, get it done, move on. Now, as he made that decision, an angel came to him in a dream. That angel came to him and said, "You know, Joe, you got a job here to do." Said that that baby Mary is carrying, that's the Son of God. And you're put into a pretty good position here. You need to be that helper. You need to help Mary. Joseph listened to that angel, and he did what that angel commanded, as it says in Matthew 1:24. Now, we don't know a lot about Joseph, but we read on later in Matthew 2:13 that after the wise men had come to visit Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus, that an angel again came and spoke to Joseph in a dream. Said, "Joseph, you need to take that baby Jesus and Mary. You need to move. You need to hightail it out of here. Because the king is going to be killing all the babies. He's wanting to get rid of Jesus, of who he has heard will be a threat to his kingdom." And so, again, Joseph has to listen to the instructions. And he picks up his family, Mary and the baby, and off they go to Egypt. And they live there. He's had to leave his home. He's had to leave his job. And they move off to Egypt. And after a time, an angel comes to him again in Egypt, says, hey, coast is clear. It's time to move back. Oh, I've got to move again. So he takes Mary and the baby, the son, Jesus, young boy by that time, and they head back to Israel. They move to Nazareth, and that's where you hear of Jesus being a Nazarene, that they lived in Nazareth. You know, think about it. You have Joseph having to go through all of those things. Talk about a helper. Moving, having to pick up at least 2 to 3 times and move to different places. Leave his job, leave his security, and be that dad, that father to the Son of God. As I was thinking through those things, I was thinking about those things that are around in our area of life. You know, think about helpers that maybe are in our life. Those peer helpers. Those who are around you. Maybe a friend or a brother that help to keep you sharp. Think about the mentors. The mentoring helper. Those who maybe are older or at least are more experienced. You know, I talked about these guys being more experienced in roping, giving advice, wisdom. Think about community helpers. You know, as I was thinking about a community helper, I think about how in the announcements, every now and then we get a card from the food bank, and our church gives the food bank, but we get that card from that person that's in the background. But Janet Bryant sends that card and says, thank you to our church for helping with the food bank. There's that community helper. You know, we don't hear a lot about her, but she's always helping to keep that food bank going. It's just another example of that. And what about relational? Just like Moses, in the relationship with Mary was that helper. What about those of you, those who are around you, those who are closest to you, who are helpers, the relational helpers? Where are we among those group of helpers? Are we willing to assist? Are we willing to be backup? Are we willing to quietly help others when we see the needs? Are we willing, as this verse said that Jerry had read, are we willing to step up to 1 Corinthians 12:28 and be able to help others? As I was talking about old Rodrigo, the ladder guy, before, Rodrigo, and that's really a true story, by the way. His name wasn't Rodrigo. It was Roberto. And Roberto is from Cuba. And I read that story one time in the upper room. Read it years back. I was telling Kevin this morning about that. And that story has stuck with me from years back of Roberto holding the ladder. Because later on, as Roberto began to realize and go through his day, he began to realize, you know, it is pretty important that somebody's down here. That guy is clear up at the top. You know, I better hold that ladder and make sure nothing happens because it's important. And as he realizes that, he goes on to tell and talk about the difficulty and danger in working on that ladder high up. They didn't have the scaffolding. They didn't have the power lifts to get up and work on the church where they were at. And these are his words of what he writes. He wrote, "For the many who are recognized in taking the lead for the kingdom of God, there are lesser recognized but equal counterparts and partners in service who support these folks. Where there are highly visible leaders doing wonderful work for God, we can be sure there are some people like me that day holding the ladder for them." Roberto fulfilled his task in holding the ladder, supporting the worker who was up high. He was the visible one high up on the walls doing the work, but Roberto was down there making sure that happened. His task allowed the work to be completed. May we be a helper like Roberto and hold the ladder so that the work can be done. Amen.
Thanks, Rod. Our closing hymn is hymn 258, "Go Tell It on the Mountain." Shall we stand as we sing this closing hymn?